had a little bit of fun with the graphic. Coming up this week, we have Alatengheili looking to get a win. He's in dire straits, really, at this point of his career. And he's taking on Kevin Croom, who one could consider to be in the same spot in his overall career. Now, for Kevin Croom, tons of experience away from the UFC. Before he made his debut, a lot of wins, next to a lot of losses, and we've talked about this time and again. For the experience for Croom outside of the big promotion, you look at some of those fights. He got slammed by Justin Gaethje in Gaethje's pro debut. Well, Gaethje's going to take on Charles Oliveira in the not-so-far-away future for titles, so that one's all right, okay. Nate Jennerman, he got guillotined in less than 50 seconds, all right. Kamwela Kirk, he got triangle chirked. Well, he's in the UFC. John Makapa in Bellator. Chirked? Well, John Makapa, he's a pretty good fighter. Adil Benjelani, a win over with Bellator. And then somehow, Kevin Croom's able to get a win over Anderson Hutchison at FAC 3. FAC, they fight a little close to glory MMA and fitness. And then he ends up into the UFC. Takes on Roosevelt Roberts. He beats him. He earns the performance of the night. It was a crazy standing guillotine in 31 seconds. And all of that is taken away by the commission because Kevin Croom tested positive for, and I want to make sure I get this one right, the righteous bush. So, for Kevin Croom, comes back, takes on Alex Caceres, tries to take him down again and again and again, and he goes 1 for 12 on takedown attempts, and he didn't look all that great in that fight. So then, he's supposed to take on Marcelo Rojo, the fight falls out, he waits a little bit longer, and it's almost a full year before he comes back out and takes on Brian Kelleher on short notice. And when he takes on Kelleher at 145 pounds, what happens? Brian Kelleher dusts him in a decision.
And Brian Kelleher was this much smaller guy in that fight, and I thought the physicality and the size of Croom would be able to give him a little bit of success going against Kelleher, and no disrespect to Brian Kelleher at all. I think this channel is one of the more pro-boom-boom Kelleher channels out there, but I really did think that the immense size of Kevin Croom was going to help him a lot in that fight, help him stay away from Kelleher. It didn't at all. Like, he was really stationary in that fight, and Kelleher was able to just get on the inside repeatedly, be it with his strikes or with his own takedown attempts. And that's what I find interesting trying to look at that fight comparing it to this one, because Alatengheili is also going to be the much smaller guy in this fight, but Kevin Croom hasn't really shown the ability to take total advantage of those physical benefits.
So that's it. I mean, with the graphic, you guys can see it there. 5'11" for Kevin Croom, 73 odd inches in reach. He's going to have roughly a 7-inch reach advantage and 6 inches of height. But sometimes he doesn't use those tools that have been given to him all that well. And I want to make sure I issue a correction, because against Alex Caceres, Kevin Croom didn't go 1 of 12. He went 1 of 16 in his overall takedown attempts. It was really bad. And when you look at the scores in just the Caceres fight and the Brian Kelleher fight, one judge has given Kevin Croom a round out of those two fights. Like, they haven't been all that competitive. Caceres, there's some 30-26s even bounced in there. So it just hasn't been a good showing since he comes in on really short notice, takes on Roosevelt Roberts, and has like a marquee statement submission win that, just due to unfortunate circumstances, I guess we'll say, is considered a no contest blemish on his record.
If we're all looking at ourselves in the mirror, though, and being very honest with ourselves, the win over Roosevelt Roberts hasn't aged all that well. And at the time, it was a big win, don't worry. Like, I'm not just trying to play it off the results, because at the time, that was a great win. It was a nice submission.
Croom was over a plus 400 underdog in that spot.
But just since then, if you win in 30 seconds, we learn a lot less about you than if you win in 15 minutes. Look at Khamzat Chimaev last night. He was great. He was untouchable before he fought Gilbert Burns. Now he's still really good. It's just, we know a lot more about him. There's a lot more information available. With Croom, yes, he looked really good against Roberts, but again, we know where Roberts is now, I should say. And for Croom, it just has been unfortunate, because with Croom, he never really has that one X factor that you think he can always go to. And in an MMA fight, you never want to be watching a fighter and almost wishing he was doing something he wasn't always doing. Because I always go back to the Caceres fight. He was having a little bit of success at distance with Caceres. I know that's a weird thing to say, but he kept on trying to go for those takedowns. And the gameplay when you're fighting Alex Caceres probably shouldn't just to be dart for takedowns all the time. He's got really good takedown defense. That's sort of how he's built his whole entire game. So it just kind of showed a lack of kind of high-level fight IQ out of Kevin Croom. And then when you look at just his inability to use his distance well in the Brian Kelleher fight, I do worry about how is he going to keep Alatengheili off of him in this matchup, because I do think Kevin Croom, he's the much more powerful guy just because he is the naturally bigger guy. I do think if these guys do start landing some, one strike for one strike combinations, Croom might end out on the better end of them, not because he's the better striker. Again, I do just think the size of him is going to help his power a little bit, but I do think that if Haley can can get on the inside, he could start to put together some volume to the body and to the head, which might help him win rounds.
That's it. I mean, for Alatengheili, makes his UFC debut way back against Dana Bakary, and that fight was, and I want to make sure that I get this one right, it was 2 years and 7 months ago. Wins that one, Bakary rallies at the end, it's a fight of the night, it's a great one, it leaves really a good taste in your mouth. Then he gets a win over Ryan Benoit. That fight was back 2 years and 3 months ago. You look at that one, split decision win goes the way of Alatengheili, but it was one of those ones that it could have gone either way. A lot of people thought Ryan Benoit won, and that was that Busan card that was early in the day. So maybe some people forget about it in terms of where it just logs in your overall brain. He goes out there and takes on Casey Kenny. There was a judge that had it 30-25 rounds 1 and round 2 as a 10-8 MMA decisions. There were 4 people that had it 30-24. Alatengheili was beaten heavily in the first and in the second round, rallied a little bit in the third, and then his last time out there against Gustavo Lopez, it's a draw on the record. Alatengheili more than likely would have won that fight, but there was a point deducted for a fence grab in the third round of that fight. And when you look at Alatengheili and you look at Gustavo Lopez, a lot of similarities to their games. A lot of pressure on the inside, a lot of wrestling, and you'll see it out of Alatengheili. Maybe he'll pump a jab out there, but he's really relying on an overhand, a hook. He's very power heavy, and when it comes to a fight like this against Kevin Croom, it is kind of tough in most circumstances to ask a smaller guy to close the distance behind a guy who's this big, but if only Kevin Croom fought behind a jab.
Exactly. If only Stefan Struve knew how tall he was. That's the thing with Croom, and that's why I don't have much confidence in trying to make a pick for Kevin Croom in this fight, because he doesn't have tremendous finishing ability, especially on the feet. If he does get this on the mat, it might be a little bit different, and this is where both these guys kind of fall into. Kevin Croom is a good offensive wrestler, for the most part. He does struggle a little bit defensively, and so does Alatengheili. Like, Alateng can get offensive takedowns. He does struggle defensively with takedowns, though, so I am curious to see, does Haley go in there with an offensive mind with his grappling? Because I could see a world where he could get a takedown and look really good on top for a round, but I could also see a world where Kevin Croom takes him down in the first 30 seconds, and he's really able to work his submission game from that point on.
The odds for this one, Alatengheili open to favorite, -140, now at a -187 for Kevin Croom, open to +120. He's a +153. Have a look at the Tapology votes. Surprise to us, as they are to you, Matt. I'm going to say over under 65%. Alatengheili.
I'll say under.
You're going to say under. It's over 469 total votes. 74% going with Alateng. 89% by decision for the 26% that have Croom. 67% by decision. For Alatengheili, decent takedown defense in the UFC. On the regional scene, might not have been the greatest. 33% takedown offense in the UFC. He has gone for quite a bit. 1.75 per 15 minutes. And he has made the big ol' switch over in the last couple of camps, working out of Fight Ready. Obviously, you heard that Korean Zombies corner. There were a few different Fight Ready fighters last weekend. Henry Cejudo. But if you go over to Alatengheili's Instagram, Hunter Azure over there, Archie Long, you've got Kevin Natividad and Jordan Espinoza. All wrestlers. So we'll see how that plays out for Alatengheili. Poor striking accuracy in the UFC as well at a 32% clip. For Kevin Croom, bigger guy, Glory MMA and Fitness, the Grant Dawsons of the world, James Krause, so on and so forth. It seems like every weekend we kind of prop that gym up a little bit. But when it comes to this fight, Matt, I know we kind of set it up maybe a little bit more one way than the other, and we like to kind of try and split it down the middle. But what's the pick here?
If I didn't see Kevin Croom's last fight, I would pick him to win this, a large part based on his size. I really do think that has a huge part to play, especially in MMA. I know size is something we often think about because everybody has to make a weight class, so it really comes down to how much weight someone's willing to cut. But with Kevin Croom, he has all the physical advantages, especially for this weight class. I just don't think he can really use a lot of those advantages effectively, especially in this matchup. Now, I'm going to say this. I might be picking Alatengheili in this fight. I don't think he's going to go on to win 5-6 fights in a row by any stretch. I do think his activity is going to be just enough to edge some rounds away from Kevin Croom. Ali does have a good chin, and that's the thing. I will be curious to see who does start to wrestle earlier. If Croom is able to get this down to the mat early, I do think he can have success, but my official pick will be for Alatengheili.
I think you're going to see Croom wrestle earlier. Alatengheili's been more of a late wrestler in the late second to early third and throughout the third, and he normally loses those rounds too, so watch out for that one. But for me, I do have Alatengheili closing distance with the bigger shots. Kevin Croom, definitely a live dog out there, especially if you like him by submission in a matchup like this one. So let us know down below in the comments section who you have. Both of us going with the Mongolian Knight. It is Alatengheili, big time card headlined by the rematch between Vicente Luque and Bilal Muhammad. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say, let's get into it.